Welcome to Tales from the Trenches, Season 4. Today, I'm talking with Amanda Smith.
Here's a story of a fundraiser who was launching his very own web show. Each episode is very short due to edits, so it can really flow. Here's a story of a podcast guest star who was busy raising money of their own. They were each great in their own way, fundraising in the zone. Till the one day when Jack asked a guest to join him, and they knew it was much more than a jest, that these guests must somehow form a resource. That's the way they all became the podcast guests. The podcast guests. The podcast guests. That's the way they became the podcast guests.
Amanda Smith is a seasoned philanthropy leader with 20 years of experience in advancement services and strategic data management. As executive director at Lehigh Valley Health Networks, she has significantly enhanced donor pipelines and fundraising performance. With both an MBA and an MPA, Amanda combines academic expertise with practical experience for nonprofit organizations. Her achievements include increasing a donor pool by 1,455% in just 3 years. Recognized in the Association of Healthcare Philanthropy's 40 Under 40, Amanda excels in leveraging data-driven strategies to drive philanthropic successes, focusing on coaching fundraising teams and optimizing major gift strategies. So, Amanda, welcome.
Thanks, Jack, for having me.
The name of the podcast is Tales from the Trenches. So I always kind of talk to the fundraisers about, their life in the trenches.
Yeah.
So in Canada, we often call it a canvas. I do, and it's the same thing as solicitation, but
Okay.
Solicitation has that connotation of a woman of the night. So we tend not to
Use that.
use
Okay. There you
solicitation
go.
as much. So or a canvas, whatever.
Yeah.
Tell me about the best ask that you were on, and how
Oh,
did that kind of work its
man.
way out?
Yeah. So, I worked at a small museum. It was called Poplar Forest, Thomas Jefferson's retreat home. So we often referred to as, the other Monticello. Just have been involved in the gifts around with board members, right? So really just making sure that we're having those relationships really segmented. So I worked with our CEO at the time to really develop a plan for all of our board members, because that was something that hadn't been done in the past, is like a really targeted ask, because sometimes we have boards that whatever you can give is so great, right? Because they often, I know, and I hate the saying time, treasure, talent. I just can't stand it. But there are board members that obviously think that giving their time and their talent is great. But how do we then transition to 100% board participation, right? So what we did was a lot of education around why board giving is so important from a foundation standpoint, and our overall, how are you going to represent us as an organization and ask others to give if you're not giving 100%? So we just did some strategic work around really education. And I do this still today, educating boards on the importance of giving and then getting 100% board participation. So we did a lot of education around that, and then did a series of asks to then, follow up on what we had educated them on to get 100% board participation. So I think that's probably the best one for me, just because you're changing mind shift of people, right? Because people are somewhat, if you're older, you're stuck in your ways, right? It's hard to get people to change their mind on things when they're set in those ways. So I think it's important, if we educate people on why we're asking them to do something and be a part of something, then we can have better buy-in and then better fundraising results.
Did you have a minimum, when you went to those board members, was it $1,000? Was there a number in it, or
No,
was it?
we don't typically do, and it's hard, right? Because what's meaningful to you is not meaningful to everybody else, right? And so you think about, I work with some organizations now, their board spans, right? So if you have a 20-something-year-old and a 60-something-year-old, and then you have your mid-level career professionals, right? $1,000 to a 20-something that just got out of college with debt is a lot of money, whereas $1,000 to somebody that's at the height of their career might be a drop in the bucket. So no minimums. It's really, I think, phrasing it around what's going to be significant to you and be impactful to you and make you feel good about giving to the organization rather than putting a dollar amount on it, because then you kind of self-select people off the board when you do that, right? Like
I
$5,000 to
I
some
couldn't
person.
agree more.
Yeah,
I actually used to say to people, the charity that you're on the board should be in your top 3 of charities. And if it's not, then you got to look at yourself in the mirror and say, either I'm spreading myself too thin, I'm involved in way too many
amazing.
charities, or this one just isn't a priority for me at this point in time.
Yeah, we have a lot of
Um,
clients that do that as well, say the, top 3. So, yeah,
yeah,
seems to be a
yeah.
good rule of thumb.
Yeah, and I remember someone telling me that they give of their time, and I said, "When I'm raising time, you'll be first in line." I said, "But I have yet to be able to say, I have 800 hours,
Yeah.
right? And
Wouldn't
to
that be
pay for
nice?
anything."
Yeah. Yeah, and so how do you recognize those board members too, I think is important, right? Like, yes, you are giving of your time and your talent, but to make a dent and to really show the impact that we're doing, we ask that everybody give of their treasure too. So,
Right, right. So, what's something that you've learned from a donor when you've been out on these canvases or solicitations? I always find that, you learn things, you walk away and like, oh my gosh, I had no idea, or it broke a stereotype or perception that I may have had going in.
yeah, I think for me, it's really how do people like to be communicated with, and what do they, you know, put yourself in a donor's shoes. How do you want to be thanked? How do you want to be communicated with? And I think so often we assume that people want impact reports and they want thank you calls and they want thank you handwritten notes and stuff. And sometimes donors don't want that, right? And sometimes they want all of it. So I think that's important when you're out really working with donors is, you know, how do you want to be communicated with, and what can we do to further our relationship? Is that a quarterly check-in with you, or do you want to be left alone? Because some people want their privacy and don't want to be bothered, but they still want to support your organization. They just want to do it differently. So I think that's one important thing that I've learned is just meeting the donor where they are, and really being donor centric in that and not kind of pushing my agenda. I've worked with people that have just, inundated people with information. And if you're having a one-way conversation, it's not really developing a relationship. So really looking at yourself and saying, okay, what am I doing and how am I communicating with my donors and my prospects so that they want to communicate back with me, and make an impact rather than me just sending things I think they might like or things they're interested in without really having that conversation and asking them.
It's interesting you say that. So, I think of stewardship or, which is kind of what that whole umbrella is. Almost the best stewardship is bespoke stewardship. So, bespoke is that it's custom for Amanda. It will be different for Jack. It'll be different for Susie. And obviously, you can't do that with the direct mail folks and the masses. But when you get to the major gifts, that's exactly what you do. You don't have you create a case or a prospectus, but they're usually one-offs. So it's not a template per se, but it takes a lot of time to do that. But it is a great investment.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think about all the impact reporting we do now, and it is time consuming and it takes a lot of work, especially if you're waiting on somebody else to tell you how that program was spent or how they're doing things, right? You're waiting on clinicians and you're waiting on program directors or whatever to have that input. But the end result is so great, right? Because you customize it to that person. And then they feel, oh my gosh, they really did what they said they were going to do. They took my money and they used it exactly how I wanted them to use it. And look at these results that have happened because of the dollars I gave and the work they were able to do. Um, yeah, I'm a big cheerleader for personalized impact reports and letters and things. And it is hard to do in direct mail too, but I think we can, if we create donor personas for our organization, and we know what our donors look like, we can then kind of segment our direct mail a little bit more personalized, right? Rather than everybody getting that generic letter.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about the reporting back. Sometimes programs, a donor will give you $25,000 to do A, B, and C, and it just doesn't work, right? So we tried it. It A worked, but B and C were dogs. And everyone is petrified to go back to the donor and to tell them that, oh, we failed. We were supposed to have these metrics and we blew it. So I've had it a couple of times happen in my career. Number one is you don't wait until it's over. You give them progress as time goes on, so that they aren't surprised. But I think that as long as you're learning from those mistakes, so many times we learn things by our errors more than we do from the things that we're successful at. I learn from, I don't want to do that again. Maybe I'll do it a different way and get a different result. So donors like to kind of see that change. But as fundraisers, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to tell this guy that his $50,000 was wasted. It wasn't.
Yeah, but then how do you turn that into an opportunity is what I say, right? So how do you then say, you know what, you gave us $50,000 and we were able to accomplish . But from this, we've learned that what it would really take is a transformational gift to make this happen. And we want to partner with you to make that happen. So I think it's really that perspective of how you turn it around, right? It's we've learned and you are a partner in this and we brought you along on the journey to learn with us. And now we want you to partner with us to learn even more and make this better. So I see it, I understand nobody wants to go back to a donor and say, oh my gosh, like, we screwed up. We didn't spend your money how we were supposed to, whatever. But I think if we take them along the journey with us and we're doing the impact reporting and we're sharing updates and we're involving them in conversations, we can quickly then pivot it around and actually benefit the organization if we have that partner that's willing then to step in and say, you know what, you guys did do good work. Maybe you didn't meet all of the metrics or the KPIs that were outlined, but I do see the investment in this and I'd like to continue our partnership.
Yeah, and it even translates to the board. I found that not-for-profit boards usually have zero risk tolerance. And almost to the point of, no, we can't ever deviate because we know this is the tried and true, and that's what we're going to go on. Because the theory is, if I own a company and I try something and it fails, then I'm not hurting anyone. But if I own if I'm running a charity and we lose $50,000 on a bad program, well, that's $50,000 now that can't go to some of your good programs. So I've met some philanthropists that actually say you should be setting aside about 10% of what they call noble failure, to take some risk. And so that, you can be a little bit innovative, and some of it won't work, but you're going to learn a ton from that noble failure pool.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting concept for sure. I think, boards are quick to, they don't want risk, but if we don't take the risk, how do we ever know where we could actually end up, right? And I also think boards in general just need more education around fundraising as a whole. It's a whole topic I could get into on another tangent, Jack, honestly. But I think we're so quickly to think, like boards are so quickly to think like, okay, I can just go out and I'm going to go ask Jack for, $50,000 to support XYZ. Well, I haven't talked to Jack in over a year. So just because he has money doesn't mean he's ready to give, right? Because I haven't done that work. How long it takes to cultivate relationships, I think is a lot of boards lack the knowledge of knowing how long it takes. It's work. It's not an overnight thing where I can just pull money out of the air.
You're quite right. So, direct mail is very, very easy to measure, right? So you send your direct mail, that in the first 2 weeks, you're going to get about 80% of the money that direct mail is going to perform. You know exactly how it's going to perform. It's real easy, money in, money out. An event, you spend your money, But major gifts, it sometimes takes a couple years of cultivation
Yeah.
to close the gift, and it may not even be, the original gift that you were looking at.
Yeah, or the amount, right? So we're putting all our eggs in a basket saying, okay, we're going to ask Jack for $1 million. We've worked up to it. We go to Jack and Jack says, you know what? I just made a commitment to the YMCA or whatever down the street, and I can give you 250, but I can't give you $1 million. So I think we put these lofty goals on development shops and development officers and teams. And, we've got to raise this, this, and this. But do we have the pipeline to get there? And where are our prospects on the pipeline? Are they ready to be asked to get this dollar amount? So I think if you don't understand philanthropy, you don't understand development, and this can be executive directors too, anybody, right? It takes time and it takes relationship building, and we have to invest in our development professionals to be able to get to that point and not so quickly just say you have that dollar goal. So yes, we have a dollar goal, but what do your other goals look like for your development, your frontline staff? Like, are they developing new relationships? Are they moving people through the pipeline? And so quickly we focus on that dollar goal when it's so important to develop every other prospect pool and thing, right? Because we know our donors are eventually, our good donors, our older donors are eventually not going to be there, right? So are we building that pipeline for that next generation to make up that difference and not just solely focusing on that dollar goal? So,
Amanda, this has been absolutely fascinating. I really enjoyed our chats. If someone wanted to get hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
sure. Well, Jack, depends. I have an email. It's amanda@wisenow.com, WIZENOW.com. Cool AI tool that we're working on over there on Wise, but also do some annual fund, major gift stuff as well. So thanks so much for having me. I was, first time podcaster, but I really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear.